gave Mueller in cooperation was, you know, I was talking to other people in the administration about what I was doing. And remember those 18 days that went from the time that Sally Yates, then the acting head of the AG there in the Department of Justice, when they said, hey, you got a problem with him, 18 days went before they did anything about it. When they did do something about it, the president said nothing about Flynn's potential criminality. Why? 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 Let's read this from Flynn, okay? The nature and circumstances of the offense. General Flynn doesn't take issue with the description of the nature and circumstances of the offense contained in the government's sentencing memorandum and the pre-sentence investigation report. And then there's all this legal citing. As General Flynn has frankly acknowledged in his own words, he recognizes that his actions were wrong and he accepts full responsibility for them. There are, at the same time, here's where it gets interesting, additional facts regarding the circumstances of the FBI interview of General Flynn on January 24th, 2017, that are relevant to the court's consideration of a just punishment. At 12:35 p.m. on January 24th, 2017, the first Tuesday after the presidential inauguration, General Flynn received a phone call from then Deputy Director of the FBI, Andrew McCabe. You know that name. It was on a secure phone in his West Wing office. General Flynn had for many years been accustomed to working in cooperation with the FBI in matters of national security. He and Mr. McCabe briefly discussed a security training session the FBI had recently conducted at the White House before Mr. McCabe, by his own account, stated that he, quote, felt that we needed to have two of our own agents sit down with General Flynn to talk about his communications with Russian representatives. Context matters. They call him up. They're not treating him like a mark. They're, shooting the, talking about this other thing that has nothing to do with anything. That's going to become instructive, and here's why. Mr. McCabe's account states, I explained that I thought the quickest way to get this done was to have a conversation between Flynn and the agents only. I further stated that if LTG, Lieutenant General Flynn, wished to include anyone else in the meeting, like the White House counsel, for instance, I would need to involve the Department of Justice. All right, they're putting it in there because Flynn was getting some pressure to do this their way and then. He wasn't thinking about protecting himself. That's instructive. Flynn stated that this would not be necessary. He wouldn't need any help, and agreed to meet with the agents without any additional participants. And less than 2 hours later, at 2:15 p.m., so look how fast this happened. You think that would have triggered something in Flynn's head, like why are these guys just jumping over here if it doesn't matter? FBI Deputy Assistant Director Peter Strzok, remember that name? Okay, he wound up becoming an infamous part in this. But he and McCabe are the names connected to Flynn with this. So Strzok and a second FBI agent arrive at the White House to interview General Flynn. By the agent's account, General Flynn was relaxed and jocular and offered to give the agents a little tour of the area around his West Wing office. The agents, listen to this, the agents did not provide General Flynn with a warning of the penalties for making a false statement under 18 U.S.C. 1001 before, during, or after the interview. Why does that matter? Let's just stop here for a second. Because it's about feel. It's about what they were making Flynn think. Now, you can say, well, that's what law enforcement does. Not with one of their own, not with the White House. So what it's suggesting is that there was an atmosphere here of amiability being given to Flynn. And why does this matter? It matters because the theory of the case is, man, this Flynn is sneaky. He's just a lying, sneaky, manipulative guy. Not here. Not here he wasn't. He let them into the office. He didn't have his own lawyer present. He said, let's do it easy. He wants to show them around the office. They don't warn him of the penalties. Well, would he know them? Of course. He's a savvy guy. But they didn't for feel. Keep him comfortable. It matters. And it's going to matter in the sentencing. I promise you that. Prior to the FBI's interview of General Flynn, Mr. McCabe and other FBI agents, officials, decided the agents would not warn Flynn that it was a crime to lie during an FBI interview because they wanted Flynn to be relaxed. And they were concerned that giving the warnings might adversely affect the rapport. Yeah, no kidding. That's what one of the agents reported. Before the interview, FBI officials had also decided that if Flynn said he did not remember something they knew he said, they would use the exact words Flynn used to try to refresh his recollection. It's not unusual. If Flynn still would not confirm what he said, they would not confront him or talk him through it. One of the agents reported that General Flynn was unguarded during the interview and clearly saw the FBI agents as allies. Now, I think that this is important. Legally, I think it's important. I think it takes away from the idea that Flynn was manipulative and looking to get away with something, okay? That's going to be relevant to the judges, and certainly it was to the special prosecutor. Doesn't mean he didn't lie. Doesn't mean what he did was wrong, which he now takes responsibility for. But remember, this is about understanding the man in full, because he's going to offer information that goes beyond his own crime. Who knew what he was saying to the Russian ambassador, why he was saying it? Jared Kushner was there for one of the meetings. Jared Kushner got another meeting with the Russian ambassador's help afterwards. What did they know and why? What would have been sanctions? And it's all going to be in there, and that's why this matters, to understand Flynn in full. That's what I say. What do the great debaters say? Angela Rye and Scott Jennings. Let's deal with this quickly, and then we'll move on to some of the other huge headlines that we have today. Angela Rye, my reckoning of why this is in this sentencing report, and this is Flynn putting the best face on his situation that he can, but to the extent that these are factual recollections of how he was with people when they asked him about this, what does it mean to you?
Well, I think it is important to note that this is the defense's sentencing memo. This is their request. They cite his 33-plus years of military experience, right? And I would say because of his 33-plus years of military experience, he knows the importance of the veracity of statements, whether or not he's been forewarned about said veracity of statements. I think it's also important to realize that when you have served your country in this way, perhaps in General Flynn's role, he somehow thought that he was privileged, thought that he may have been above the law. And it is so interesting to me, Chris, that this is the same man who stood on the stage during the Republican National Convention and led a chant of lock her up.
Yep.
It's fascinating.
Hoisted on his own petard, as they say, a petard being a bomb. That was his line, wind up blowing him up. Scott, the reason I pointed out is a man in full, not playing with the literary connotation, but that, yeah, he lied. Yeah, he got sneaky. He owns it. But he knows other things, things that we should believe. And he's not a bad guy through and through. Nobody who's been with him thinks that about him. And I think that creates exposure for the president, even though that this is his defensive posture here, Flynn. 18 days you knew what he did. 18 days they told you that they thought he could be compromised, maybe Pence too, because they didn't know what Pence knew about what he was being told. The connections with Kushner. I think there's going to be something here we're going to hear about again. Tell me I'm wrong.
Yeah, I think you're right, actually. I've always thought the most interesting thing Flynn is going to have to say is who told him to talk to the Russians during the transition and who was instructing him to talk to the Russians after he got the job, and what was he instructed to say. You don't pick up the phone and make those kinds of calls, on a whim. I've always believed that when we find that out, we're going to know more about where Mueller is headed on that piece of the investigation. Look, I think this guy served his country. I think he made a huge mistake, and I think, as they say, karma is a you-know-what, and the lock-her-up chants are going to haunt him and follow him around for the rest of his days. He should not have to be told not to lie. You should know not to lie. If you're a military officer of that rank, or any kind of military
100%.
officer for that matter,
100%.
you know not to lie. So I think he's going to get some kind of punishment. Whether he gets jail time or not, I'm ambivalent on, but I think his career has obviously been destroyed. His life has been changed forever, and he should have to do something to acknowledge that he broke a code, and that code is when you're an officer of that rank, you do not lie to anyone, let alone your own government.
And that code of integrity often transcends with military men and women, even their responsibilities under the law. But let's see where he turns out at the end of all of this and how he is wind up reckoned in terms of his overall part in the puzzle. All right, let's talk about something else. Angela and Scott, do I get an amen on my new nickname of Nanchucked for Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer for the way that they went toe-to-toe with Trump? In fairness, Don Lemon gave it to me. I was going to go with Palumer.
Don, that's terrible.
With Palumer or Schmelosi.
How about none of the three? Those are awful.
But come on, after what we saw in there today, that is Trump's theater. The lights are on, he's saying things, half of them aren't even close to true, but he puts people on their heels. Not today, Angela. Was that some type of battle cry by the new leadership that we're coming? We're going to fight you on your own terms and we're going to find a way to win?
I really think that they were just doing what good leaders do, right? You call people to the carpet, you hold them accountable, you ensure that they are having conversations rooted in fact. They were having a conversation with someone who is supposed to act as the commander-in-chief, and he demonstrated that he was ill-prepared. Donald Trump thought that this was a reality show, perhaps another season of The Apprentice, and little did he know that these folks are professionals. They've been doing this work a really long time, and they are coming in to not just advocate for what's in the best interest of their constituents, but also what's in the best interest of not even just their parties. Nancy Pelosi is now going in as likely the Speaker of the House, so she's supposed to be representing what's in the best interest of the American people. What Donald Trump should have been doing today was taking copious notes about what it looks like to have a meaningful conversation, to how to find common ground and figure out how at some point you get to compromise.
Well, I don't know that they checked those boxes. I mean, you know, I saw it as